Allora, Ale, Francesca, se volete potete venire già, almeno si fa due chiacchiere, vi rilassate perché insomma ho visto agitati, no?
Io che ansia.
Ecco qua Francesca e Alessandro di LICAONI, benvenuti, grazie di essere qui con noi.
Buonasera.
Ora vi lascio la poltrona e quella presidenziale. Ragazzi, vi lascio ai LICAONI che faranno un'intervista sul cinema indipendente da indipendenti e perché no, magari affronterete anche qualche altro argomento con il buon Perkins. Bene, eccoci. Hi.
Hi.
Hi, I would like to ask you something about the first step of the movie production, okay? Because you are the director and the author of all your movies. Sometimes you write for other directors. Sometimes you are the director of screenplay, script made from other writers. And I'd like to, I have some questions about that. I'd like to ask you, which is your routine as a screenwriter, if you had one.
Yeah, I believe that, you know, for something to be meaningful, it has to be, you know, honest and vulnerable about the artist, right? So everything that I try to write myself, I try to write about myself, right?
Yeah.
So all of the movies I've made are biographical. They may not look biographical, they may seem like these otherworldly magical acts. A lot of the time my protagonist is a young woman, for example. It's not an old man like me. But I do believe that all of the work that I do, that I generate, that's original from me, is supposed to be about me in some way or other. It's the only way I know how to do it. It's the only way I know how to be honest about what I'm creating. So I work from the inside out, right? So I try to listen to what's in my atmosphere, right? A lot of writing and a lot of creation and a lot of directing and a lot of making art is listening, for me, to the source, right? Whatever you want to call the source, you want to call it God, you want to call it the muses, you want to call it nature or energy or music or whatever, wherever you get your source from. I listen to what it's trying to say to me. And maybe that sounds a little bit goofy, but that's how I start anything. It's how I become involved with something. And so from there, you know, I try to sort of filter out what's coming my way from the universe, and I try to pick the elements that I think fit and work together, and that describe the truth about myself that I'm trying to capture. And so once I have a sense of what that is, then, you know, I write very, very, very long outlines. I write very big, very fat, very overwritten outlines. Because for me, if I write a big, solid outline, then screenwriting becomes only taking away, right? You're pulling out pieces that you don't need, you're keeping the pieces that you do need, and by having a big outline to work with, you're able to create unconscious subtext, right? Because you're pulling things away. So first I find out how it's about me, and then I just write about it. And I write big, long prose pages and pages and pages and pages, 100 pages maybe, of outline. And then when I go to screenwriting, it's just pulling out the words that I want.
So your screenplays are canonic, or do you take other forms of writing the text? Sorry.
Yeah, the text I write just as one stream of language, right? Like one big block, like Jack Kerouac or James Joyce, right? Ulysses, it's just, and so if I can get it all out and I can see it, then I can pick what's necessary. And one of the great things about screenwriting is that you're supposed to hide so much, right? Especially in the horror genre, you can't show everything. You can't say everything. You can't reveal everything. So if you have everything, then you know how to hide it, right? So you're able to sort of pull this out and say, I'm going to hide that for later. But it all starts with a lot of outpour, and then you just edit, and then you pull out.
Una domanda, hai qualche lettore, lettrice di fiducia in fase di revisione?
No, I hand something in when it's finished, especially now. You know, maybe when I was younger and I was first figuring it out, I was interested more in what people thought. I mean, I have a lot of collaborators, but in the screenwriting process, I try to keep it to myself until I think it's pretty good. It's a very sacred time. As soon as I turn in the script, then everybody, it's like mosquitoes, right? Everybody comes onto the thing, which is great. It's what I want that. I want collaboration, but it's almost like a mother with their baby for a while. It's like, leave me alone, right? Like I get this time, this alone time with this thing, and I'm trying to figure out what it is, and I'm trying to listen to it. So I take that time as private, and then production becomes everybody in.
Invece quando devi dirigere una sceneggiatura scritta da altri, come nel caso del prossimo film in uscita, siamo contentissimi, come ti relazioni?
I have to find the thing about it that is true for me specifically, and sometimes that's not a nice thing, right? This is not always flattering. So in the case of Keeper, you know, Keeper is very much about toxic masculinity, right? And sort of the man as villain, or the presumptive man, the assumptive man, the man who presumes. So when we were developing Keeper, what was important to me was how do I see my worst aspects of my masculinity, right? As the world changes now, and sort of male dominance is becoming very old-fashioned, we still have to be aware of the fact that I am not a young man. I grew up with the wrong message, right? So I got taught the wrong shit. So I'm not a perfect man by any means. I do a lot of things that are not so great. And so in making a movie like Keeper about a man who's not so great, I figure it's my obligation to see myself in him.
Il tuo primo film mi ha colpito tantissimo perché dimostrava già una perfetta consapevolezza del linguaggio cinematografico. Cioè il linguaggio cinematografico che hai adottato nel tuo film di esordio era già estremamente maturo, personale, e la domanda che ti faccio è: come ci sei arrivato? Era una cosa che era già chiara da prima, quando lo pensavi, era già tutto così preciso nella tua mente, o ci sei arrivato durante la fase di post-produzione?
I think I was lucky to have started my filmmaking career quite late. I was 41 years old when I made The Black Coat's Daughter, and had lived a couple of lifetimes by that point. I'd been through quite a lot, and I had suffered a fair amount, which is not something that someone necessarily wants to be proud of, but it's the way that it goes sometimes. When I was younger, we all wanted to be Orson Welles, and we all wanted to make our first movie when we were 25 years old, and that was supposed to be the goal, right? You're supposed to, as fast as I can, I'm gonna make a movie. Well, if I had made a movie when I was 25, it would have been idiotic. And so I was lucky that I had to wait. You know, lucky is maybe the wrong word, but that's the way that my life went. And so by the time I got behind the camera for The Black Coat's Daughter, I think I had a somewhat sophisticated sense of loss. And the movie is just a look at that, right? The Black Coat's Daughter is just a movie about losing your parents, which is something that I understood. And so instead of making some fiction, some wild fiction, which I would have had to make a lot of sort of guesses about, instead I chose to write about myself. It just so happened to be in the character of a 15-year-old girl, but the scenario was my scenario, where we made the movie in Ottawa, Canada in February. It was the coldest you could imagine. It was 35 degrees below zero every day. And it reminded me of going to, my family and I used to go to Cape Cod in Massachusetts on the east coast of the United States for summer vacation with my parents. And I remember going there the first time in winter, after my father had died. And I remember getting out of the car and standing on the ground. And for the first time in my life, I recognized how hard the earth was. I'd always come in summer when it was very supple and warm and soft. But stepping out of my car in November in Massachusetts was really shocking because the earth was very, very hard. And it was an all over body sensation that I think I stored in my mind and in my creative self, stored this experience. And so when I'm in Ottawa and it's 35 degrees below zero and I'm filming a movie about losing your parents, it all made sense, right? If you allow for the truth to exist, if you allow for your experience to be correct, and you allow for your emotion to be present, then you kind of can't go wrong. Sure, did I have an understanding of movies? Sure. Had I written some scripts? Sure. Had I grown up in Hollywood? Of course. But at the end of the day, it was my emotionality that was my best tool for making that movie.
Bellissimo. E mi collego a questo tema della morte che è presente in tanti tuoi film, negli horror, e di questo senso di perdita. E mi permetto di citare una scena bellissima del film che invece ha un taglio comico, che è The Monkey, e in particolar modo la scena in cui la madre spiega la morte ai due bambini, ai due ragazzi, in modo molto diretto, molto esplicito e, se vogliamo, anche molto onesto. Ecco, stavo per dire crudo, ma in realtà è in modo molto onesto. E la risposta che dà dopo questa scena è quello di andare a ballare sul rock, sulla musica rock. E è una scena bellissima, catartica, e mi chiedo, questo è un percorso che hai fatto, che stai facendo? È una risposta che ti dai e ci dai a noi come pubblico rispetto a questa tematica?
I think it comes from having experienced death, both in my own life and in other people's lives, and being met with the moment when you're supposed to call somebody or you see someone for the first time after they've experienced the death, and you're supposed to produce something to say. And the feeling that there is nothing to speak about it. And I loved that in the Monkey, Tatiana Maslany, who played the mom, was able to sort of say, it just is what it is. There's no verbal solution to death. There's nothing you can say about it. Oh, I'm so sorry, or are you okay? All these platitudes are fine, and they're the best that we can do sometimes, but they don't really do anything. And the idea that it's not a new idea, it's not a complex idea, but I think that's what makes it a good idea, is that, we have this life, we don't know what else there is, and we had better use it to its best effect, right? We'd better fill our lives as best we can. It's a very simple thing to say. I think it was just that I was saying it in the context of a very raunchy, kind of grotesque, silly horror movie that made it sound different, right? We all know we should enjoy every day. We all know that we should wake up in the morning and say, man, I didn't die in the night. I'm still awake and I'm still alive, and how wonderful is that? We all know that we should do that, and we get lazy about it, right? We take it for granted. I think just the fact that it was in this really kind of splashy, gory movie that made it sound more important or more surprising. And that was certainly the intention, right? I was given this great story to adapt, and I was able to very easily see my own life experience inside of it. And so I only wanted to try to share whatever sort of simple truth I could. And in that case, it was just be happy with the life, with the fact that you have life, and do something nice in your day. Smile at someone, make something, help somebody, tell someone you love them. Do something you don't need to do for somebody. It's all very simple. I think it's just the fact that it came in the context of that movie that made it seem special.
Posso aggiungere un piccolo pensiero? Noi ci siamo riguardati questo film recentemente, quando abbiamo saputo che ci sarebbe stata questa chiacchierata, e devo dire che quel momento specifico, a parte il film che abbiamo trovato veramente tanto divertente, quel momento specifico lì ci ha preso veramente al cuore, anche perché in questo momento quella tematica ovviamente risuona molto, dopo la dipartita di Federico, e risuona molto anche il concetto di cui Federico parlava sempre nel suo approccio alla critica al cinema, cioè il fatto che il cinema in qualche maniera parte da un autore che mette il proprio cuore in esposizione, e questo poi risuona e arriva a qualcun altro che magari ha vissuto delle esperienze simili o sta vivendo delle esperienze simili, e quindi appunto quella scena lì in particolar modo ci ha veramente colpito molto, quindi grazie Oz.
I really appreciate that. The success of The Monkey for me was not that it did well at the box office or that it had funny death in it. The success of The Monkey for me was in hearing things like that, which I have heard quite a bit from people who one writer, a writer of children's books, wrote to me and said that he and his brother and his sister had their mother's funeral was on a Friday, and on Sunday they went to go see The Monkey, and he said he looked over at his sister in the middle of the movie. He said he'd never seen someone laughing as hard as she was laughing, and how much they really needed it, and how it was their favorite movie of all time because it had landed at exactly the right point. So the fact that I was able to do something that on the surface was ridiculous but had a very beautiful heart to it was all I was trying to do, and the fact that it succeeded with people who could see it that way was a really significant accomplishment for me, and something I'm very proud of. Thank you for understanding the movie so well.
Una domanda per tornare un po' sull'aspetto più registico, una cosa che mi tocca molto nel profondo, in quanto nel mio piccolo appunto anch'io autore di film horror. Siccome il tuo cinema si basa molto su tutti gli elementi audiovisivi, regia, immagine, montaggio, suono, tantissimo. Quindi qualcosa che passa attraverso tutte le fasi della lavorazione cinematografica e che trova, immagino, un compimento quando arrivi alla fine. Hai mai la sensazione mentre ci stai lavorando, mentre sei sul set, quindi quando mancano ancora molti di questi elementi, che stai facendo uno schifo, che non funzionerà mai e che probabilmente stai sbagliando?
That's a great question. One thing that I am always careful to do is I write sound into all my screenplays. Sound is written, right? And this often surprises the sound recordists or the sound mixer. They don't usually see it in screenplays, and I often wonder why they don't. Sound is equally as important as picture in a movie, and silence is really loud in a movie in a really interesting way. And so, from the screenplay stage, there's an awareness of the sound. The sound is written as a character. Oftentimes in scenes where there's no dialogue, I'm trying to make the sound the dialogue. So that's built into the screenplay process. Everybody who makes a movie knows that you don't have any idea really what the movie is until you're cutting it. You can guess, and you can make your best attempt to capture moments, to get good performance, to get good look, to get good framing, to get good special effects, to find a beautiful person, to get an emotion, to have the right words. Like, you can do your best to sort of fumble around and try to find the thing. But it's the magical mystery tour of cutting a movie where you're constantly surprised by how little you knew and how much the movie is revealing itself in the editorial and post-production process. You find out the real personality of a movie when you're cutting it, and you do your best to guide it to that point. When I'm shooting a movie, I'm really focused on the human beings, right? I'm really focused on the people who are on camera. That to me becomes, the most important part, because they're not present for the other processes, right? They're not in the script and they're not in the editing. So when you have actors and you have people who need a lot of attention, right? Actors need a lot of attention. That's why they're actors. So you have to focus on them almost to the exclusion of other elements. You try to make it look right, but I should really watch dailies more than I do. In our modern world of making movies, I feel like dailies are a little bit undervalued. We don't really spend as much time as they used to when when the great movies were made, the actual great movies were made, when A Clockwork Orange was made. They were watching all the dailies. They were sitting and watching all of the dailies. They weren't scrolling through them on their phone. They weren't bored. They were looking at dailies. And I think that watching, for filmmakers out there, watch your footage every day. Watch all of it really carefully. It's the only way you can have any sense of what you're doing and what you need to do tomorrow. I'm not very good at that, and I think I could. It's something I'm happy to talk about actually in this interview, because it reminds me for next time. Watch your goddamn dailies.
Io ti volevo fare una domanda sul lato produttivo, dal punto di vista di un filmmaker indipendente che muove i primi passi. Quanta difficoltà hai riscontrato te per ottenere la tua prima occasione di produzione? Quanto è difficile, una volta che hai fatto un film, poter rilanciare con dei progetti più ambiziosi, con dei budget più consistenti, e se hai fatto dei compromessi in passato per poter arrivare a fare una produzione, o eventualmente se saresti disposto a fare dei compromessi, perché comunque lo sappiamo, no? Da una parte c'è la produzione, dall'altra parte c'è diciamo le esigenze creative e artistiche, e a volte queste cose non vanno sempre di pari passo.
I've been very lucky, especially with the last 4 movies that I've done. I'm cutting a movie in the next room right now, that I've had very, very good producing partners who are very intelligent about how to make a movie and how to spend money properly. You know, we all have to accept, no matter who we are, that there's not enough time, right? You don't get enough time. There's not enough days. The hours are too short. The setups are too long. The cameraman is too slow. It's all just, it's just, everything takes too long, and there's no time. With Keeper, the great thing about Keeper was that we did it for no money. I mean, I'm talking about no money. And when you're doing it for no money, that means no one is watching you. And that means that there's a certain freedom and a certain relaxed attitude that you can take towards the process, which does feel good. I would rather have too little money than too much money. I would rather have limitations placed on me than complete freedom. Complete freedom when you're doing something creative, to me, is very scary. I don't like the idea of it. I think you get lost in a wilderness of your own ideas and your own intentions. I don't mean that I would give money or days away, because that's all very precious. But I do think that, you know, the aspiration to make a huge movie is not something I'm especially interested in. I've never had a lot of money. I've never had a lot of days. I've had generous, you know, I've had enough, even though it's never enough. It doesn't do any good to complain. It doesn't do any good to wish you had more, because everybody feels the same way. David Lynch never had enough time. You know, you just don't have it. And so you accept that going in. You do the best with what you can do, and you try to be, with every movie you make, you try to see further down the line, right? You try to be less myopic, less narrow-sighted. You try to think less about just what's happening here and try to see down the process a little bit. I can't tell you how many times I've been in the editing room and watching footage and wondering, why the fuck did I shoot this? Why did I spend a day on this when it's not going to be in the movie? It's not funny. It's not scary. It's not well done. I was wrong the whole time. Quentin Tarantino, who, you know, is a lot of things, but he's obviously a very brilliant filmmaker. He's a lot of things, but he's a very brilliant filmmaker. And he said very smartly that the way you use your time on set is what will define you as a filmmaker. And I thought that was so clear and so true. What you get is what you get. And you have to be very deliberate about capturing what's important and what's working. You got to abandon the stuff that's not working. It's very hard to do, and it's very hard to see it in the moment. And I think seasoned filmmakers get better and better at editing as they go, right? My friend Guillermo del Toro edits on the weekend all of his movies, right? He shoots in the week, and then on the weekends he edits. So he has a better sense of what he actually has. And I think that if you have the budget and the support to do that, great. Most of us do not, and we have children, and we have to do things on the weekends. We have to clean our house and make our beds. But if you can always be assembling the movie in your mind as you go, you'll be happier later because you won't have a bunch of stuff that you don't want. Ugh.
Senti, allora intanto innanzitutto ti dico che noi siamo in fibrillazione perché giovedì qui in Italia esce il tuo Keeper, che se non erro è il film che hai girato fra Long Legs e The Monkey, e quindi siamo tutti, non vediamo l'ora di andarla a vedere. Però vorrei chiuderti con una domanda che spero Federico avrebbe forse voluto farti. Ossia, avrai sicuramente sentito di tutta la polemica che c'è stata al Festival di Berlino con le dichiarazioni di Wim Wenders. Non voglio entrare ovviamente in quella polemica, però ti chiedo cosa ne pensi della possibilità che ha il cinema di fare commento sociale. Come ti rapporti a questa possibilità e soprattutto in questo periodo storico?
I think it's a very difficult time in human history, right? We're probably coming towards the end. It's a terrible thing to say, but it's not looking that good. And the people who run the world are increasingly insane. Maybe they've always been insane. Maybe Attila the Hun was as crazy as Donald Trump. I don't know. It's a very difficult time for reason and common sense and love. And so I think really and truly it's time to become specific about the way we care about each other. It's time to be small in the way that we think. Love the people near you. Do the best you can locally in your own life, because there's no way to control what is spinning so quickly out of control, I think. I think that it's important to stay connected to what's happening in the world, but to put your emphasis and your attention to your immediate surroundings and trying to make them as good as you can. There might not be a lot of history left. And I think this is the time for people to really huddle together with the people that they care about, doing the things that they love, and feeling as good as they can on a daily basis in the face of endless bad news. I think it's a mistake to spend your time watching the news. I think it's a mistake to spend your time worrying about politics. I think it's a better idea to go to the beach with your kids. I'm just trying to say that I think the time might be short, and I'd rather spend it creating something beautiful than reading a headline and worrying about it. It's a very powerless feeling, I think, to be a citizen of the world right now. And the best thing that we can do is to be a citizen of our own life.
Thank you.
Oz, thank you very much. Sei un
Thank
grande. You're a big man. Come direbbe Federico, sei un grande. Top.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I'm trying my best just to be a good person sometimes, you know?
We'll see you on cinema.
Yeah.
Great. Enjoy the show. I hope you like it.
Thank you very much.
Speriamo anche
Thank
noi
you very
benissimo.
much, everybody.
Grazie davvero.
Bye.
Have a good day. There it is. Bye.